in the series of virtual behind the scenes events. We would not be here today if it wasn't for the amazing support of our three sponsors, the team at Thompson Investment Management, right on the square. Also, our great friends, also right on the square, the exact opposite side, Hush Blackwell and our great friend, Paul Dombrowski. But today we have our lead sponsor, JP Cullen, who always does an amazing job and did a great amount of work on the latest zoo renovation. We've got project manager Tom Pertzborn from JP Cullen here to say a few words. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me today. Excited to be getting this kicked off. But as mentioned, I'm Tom Pertzborn. I'm a senior project manager with JP Cullen in our healthcare division. Just for a little bit of information, Cullen is a fifth-generation Wisconsin-based family-owned general contractor. Been in business since 1892. We have offices in Janesville, Milwaukee, and right here in the heart of downtown Madison with our 1 South Pinckney Street office. So right there off the Capitol, which is great. We are proud sponsors of Downtown Madison, Inc. and support the work that you do to help ensure Madison continues to have a bright and vibrant future. Today's event of the DMI behind the scenes for Henry Vilas Zoo is pretty special to me. I mentioned I'm currently in our healthcare division. However, prior to my healthcare role, I had the opportunity to complete the Arctic Passage exhibit, which brought the polar bears back to Madison. So it's been a couple of years now, but it was an exceptional project for JP Cullen to allow us to showcase our talents as the tough job experts to construct this complex project with state-of-the-art animal habitats, housing and training facilities, which I hope today we'll be able to see a few of. Working at the zoo was a great learning opportunity for me, as well as a great opportunity to work with the zookeepers and staff. And it will always definitely be one of my very special projects that I've done. JP Cullen has had the opportunity to complete several projects that support the Madison community, beginning with the addition of Bascom Hall in 1925. And then decades later, you can still see many of the iconic structures that Cullen has built, including the Van Hise building, 1 West Wilson, the Risser Justice Center, multiple projects at Camp Randall and the UW-Madison campus, and we're going back and doing more work at Camp Randall right now again, Judge Doyle Square, and even the renovation to the state capitol. As I mentioned earlier, my current role is in our healthcare division. Cullen does work in all aspects of the healthcare industry, including inpatient and ambulatory care, rural healthcare, laboratory facilities, and senior living. Madison's a pretty special place when it comes to healthcare. We're unique in the fact that we have 4 major hospitals located right here in Madison with UW Health, Unity Point Health Meriter, SSM St. Mary's, and the VA hospital. Cullen's performed and is currently performing a number of projects at each of these hospitals. We are excited to be the construction manager selected on the new transplant clinic for UW Health, which is made possible and supported with a gift from Pleasant Roland. So that's a great project that we're just getting started off on and moving forward. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about Cullen. I'm glad to be here with all of you this afternoon, and I'm really looking forward to the tour today. So I'll kick it back over to Jason, I believe.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much. You guys literally helped build the zoo. If you have not been to the Arctic Passage, which Rhonda is, this is the worst joke I'll tell today, but I'm going to tell it. There is a polar bear just over your shoulder, FYI. But if you haven't seen, not a person laughed at that joke. You're welcome for that. But if you haven't been to the Arctic Passage, please get a chance to go over. It's just amazing what's happening at the zoo these days. It really is a special facility, and to have it right downtown, right in the heart of our city, where so many people have access to it, is fantastic. And also a huge shout out to JP Cullen. They literally are the tough job experts. You guys were camped out on top of the dome of the Capitol all last summer. If you were around last summer, I am just getting sweaty armpits thinking about the work you guys were doing 200 feet up in the air. I think tuck pointing the Capitol Dome, amazing work. And their newest project, the Natatorium, which is a huge part of downtown as well. So thank you to our friends at Thompson Investment Management, Hush Blackwell, and to JP Cullen. Now, it's my honor and privilege to introduce our next person. We're going to get started with the tour here today. Rhonda Schwetz is the executive director of the Henry Vilas Zoo. And if you haven't met Rhonda before, she's just full of energy, has an amazing job, loves the animals, and I cannot wait to hear about what's happening at the zoo now, what they have planned in the future. And you can see Courtney in the background there is literally with the animals as we speak. So Rhonda, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for all you do for downtown. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Jason, and thanks for having us. We are thrilled to be here with everyone today. For those of you who haven't been to Henry Vilas in a few years, the polar bear behind me is not live, but a picture of our exhibit, and it is our female polar bear, Barrett. We are super excited that I am super excited to get to see Tom Pertzborn as well, who we worked very closely with JP Cullen to make this award-winning exhibit. If you didn't know, this exhibit actually won Exhibit of the Year in 2017 among the Association of American Zoos and Aquariums, or AZA. So that is about as high of an honor as you can get in the zoo and aquarium world. So we must have all did something right together, which is great. But enough about me. What I'd really like to do today is turn it over to Courtney. She's our education specialist, and she's really going to give you a behind the scenes of not just what you see as a visitor, but what you can also see if you do a behind the scenes tour at some point, and how our keepers are taking care of the animals. So Courtney, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining and get ready to learn a little bit more about the Henry Vilas Zoo. So here I am in part of our Arctic Passage facility. I am here in front of our Harbor Seal exhibit. So you can kind of see them poking their little heads out right now. I have Sammy, Piper, and Sparky, our 3 harbor seals that we have here at the zoo. So this is the part of the zoo that you would generally see when you come and take a visit. It's your free Henry Vilas Zoo. So here you can see we have our very large pool that has over 570,000 gallons of water. And from looking at it, it looks beautiful, but there's a lot that needs to happen behind the scenes to make sure that we are taking the best care of our animals and they have the best facilities and things that they need. So Rhonda kind of mentioned it, but something that's important to know about the Henry Vilas Zoo is that we are an AZA accredited zoo. So AZA is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and less than 10% of animal institutions are AZA accredited, which makes the Henry Vilas Zoo one of the best zoos in the country. It also means that we meet the highest standard in animal care and animal welfare. So AZA is an accreditation organization that checks up on what we're doing. So it's not just me saying, yep, we're great. It's not just Rhonda saying that. It's actually a really big organization that looks into everything that the zoo is doing to make sure that we are meeting those incredibly high standards. And that's not something that's required by law. I'm sure you guys have seen other zoos out there who are not excellent like the Henry Vilas Zoo. So AZA is one way that you can feel really good about visiting the Henry Vilas Zoo and know that we are, again, one of those top zoos in the country. Today we're going to just learn a little bit about how we take care of the animals and take a little peek behind the scenes. So now that we've seen kind of where our seals live regularly, we are going to walk behind the scenes. And first I want to point out, still again in public space, here we have our Tundra Buggy. I'm sure you guys might have seen this before if you visited the zoo. So this Tundra Buggy is here as an example of the conservation work that we help participate in here at the Henry Vilas Zoo. So we partner with Polar Bears International, which is an Arctic research facility that does work on the ground in the Arctic, helping out polar bears and studying their habitat. So Polar Bears International has 2 kind of primary questions of figuring out how many polar bears are there and where do they live. And when we answer those questions, we can really help figure out how we can best help those polar bears out. Oh my goodness. You can see, I believe that's Piper. We'll meet Keeper Kristen in just a moment, who will be able to better identify our seals. But you can see this beautiful underwater viewing, and you can really see how well adapted our seals are to aquatic life. So seals are mammals, just like us, so they do breathe air. They don't have gills like fish. But they are, for the most part, hanging out underwater, and they can hold their breath for up to 30 minutes. So sometimes people see our seals at the zoo and they worry for a second because that seal's been underwater for so long. But they can hold their breath for up to 30 minutes, which is incredible. And pretty much everything about their body is built for surviving in cold waters and swimming pretty much all of the time. So if you see them on land, which we will be able to see in just a little bit, they're pretty clunky, pretty awkward. They love to be swimming in the water. They're excellent swimmers, and their body is just built for that. So the all Arctic animals, harbor seals have a really wide range. They can live in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and they can go as far south as like California or like the Carolinas, and then go all the way up north into Canada and Alaska. So it gets pretty cold way up north there, and so they are actually really well adapted to our Wisconsin winters. So that pool that you saw is actually not heated because they are well adapted to really, really cold water. So even in Wisconsin winter when it's like -30 out, we don't heat the water, but it does go through an extensive filtration system, which we are about to see. So right now we are behind the scenes. And so the first thing I want to show you is our pump room. So this takes all of the water in the Arctic Passage facility and goes through chemical and physical filtration. So again, our seal pool is the largest, being at 570,000 gallons of water. But we also have our polar bear pool as well as our little grizzly bear pool, and all of that water moves through this pump room system, and it's essentially a life support for our animals to make sure that their water quality is high and that they have everything that they need in their spaces. So it is going to be a little bit loud in here, but hopefully you'll be able to hear me just fine. Be right next to the camera here. And we'll take a peek in to our pump room. Okay, here we are. First thing you might notice is these giant bags of salt. So we have two different types of salt in here. One type of salt is something that you might be familiar with for your water softener in your home. So we do have two very large water softeners in here. So that is the salt that helps keep our water soft. And that really helps with the filtration system and making sure that we don't have a lot of calcium buildup in our filters. And also just like how we enjoy soft water with our skin and our hair, it helps with our animals as well. So you can see our two large water softeners. And then this pallet of salt is actually salt for the water. So our seals get salt water in their indoor exhibits. And that salt water isn't necessarily something that they need to survive. Again, they're not fish, so they can survive well in fresh water as well as salt water, but it's something that would be natural in their habitat. So we always give them access to that salt water. So we add the salt in from these large bags into their indoor pools, which we'll see in just a moment. And this building is really big. We're just going to peek at a little bit of it, but it does go downstairs. There's a whole space down there that has a lot more pumps. But right here, you can see this is our ozone filtration system. So this is a type of chemical filtration. The ozone is created through high amounts of electricity. So ozone is O3, and it's highly unstable as well. So when ozone mixes with water, it breaks apart, and that extra oxygen molecule is able to attach to other chemicals. And the chemicals we're trying to get rid of is our nitrates and our phosphorus, things that naturally occur when the animals use the restroom. So we want to get those particulates out of the water, or those chemicals out of the water, because if we leave too much nitrates or phosphorus, just like you might see in our lakes, sometimes we get algal blooms, right? Large buildup algae. And we want to prevent that in our pools because we want to have nice clear water for everyone to see our animals. So this is kind of a natural way for us to remove, do a chemical filtration of some of those particles. And it's a way for us to also avoid using like chlorine or harsher chemicals that might not be as good for our animals, for their eyes and their skin. So ozone is a really unique way that we're allowed to filter that water, do a chemical filtration of our water. And then these giant things right here, these are our kind of physical filters. So this one here is for the seals, and that one there is for the polar bears. So these large filters are full of, this one's full of sand, and that one is full of glass, and they help filter out the water from any particulates. Again, the animals use the bathroom in the water, so we want to remove all of that, as well as any type of debris or fur or anything that gets clogged in there. So this is a closed system, so as the water moves through all of these pumps, which I wish I could tell you everything that's going on in here, but I am just an educator, so I don't know everything. But it moves through this system in a closed system to constantly be filtering out all of that water. And that helps us save water so we're not constantly filling up our pools and using up all that energy and using up all that extra water. And then about once a week, so it depends on the season, but we do back flushing of our filters where we push everything the opposite direction. And that helps remove some of that debris from our filters. It keeps our filters really clean. And if we needed to access the inside of our filters, this is the space where we'd be able to do that. But the filters, again, they help remove a lot of that particulate. And this is one of our physical filters, and then we have our chemical filtration. And again, a whole lot of engineering goes into this that I, as a wildlife educator, do not know. But it's really impressive to see because you don't always think about this when you go to visit a zoo. You see that beautiful seal pool and you notice how clean it is and it looks nice for our animals. But there's a whole lot of work that goes into ensuring that that seal pool is nice and clean. And again, ensuring that high standard of welfare that we have for our animals. The next thing we're going to take a little peek at is this is our freezer. And here's where we have the food for most of the animals here in Arctic Passage. So you can see boxes and boxes and boxes of fish. So this is primarily where a lot of our fish is stored. Herring and smelt are two of the types of fish that we give the seals as well as some other animals. And then here you can see these are bags of food. So it kind of looks like dog food, right? Sure, some of you guys buy your dog food at Menards and it looks pretty similar to this. But this is actually bear chow. So just like there's dog food and cat food, there is formulated food that is meant for zoo animals, made by this company, Missouri. So they look at the natural diet of those animals, and the pelleted food really helps us ensure that they're getting all the vitamins and minerals that they need to maintain that really, really healthy diet. This is not the only thing we give our animals, but it's a great way for us to supplement and ensure that they're getting those micro and macronutrients that are a little bit harder for us to measure by feeding produce and meat and things like that. And then down here, you can see some fun little popsicles. So this is what we call enrichment. And enrichment is a zoo word that means anything novel, unique, or exciting for an animal to interact with. So in here you can see some made enrichment. These are for our bears. So I see some sweet potato and apple, and they're actually colored. So you can see this one's like a purpley color, and we got orange and green in there. So these frozen treats, again, it's not necessarily part of their regular diet, but this is something to help supplement their diet and also just to make it a little bit fun. So typically in their day-to-day diet, they wouldn't get something purple. They wouldn't get something frozen. So having that different texture and different color just makes it fun and exciting. And it really helps kind of stimulate natural behaviors. Even though in the wild, they wouldn't find a purple popsicle, they would be tearing open food, sniffing for different things, breaking open things out of ice. That would all be normal things for especially our polar bears to be doing. So we want to encourage those natural behaviors through some things that might not be natural or things that they find in the wild, but help stimulate that. And again, let's just break up their day-to-day, make it a little fun. Who doesn't love to have a popsicle from time to time, right? I know I'm big on ice cream. All right, next we're gonna head into the seal kitchen and take a little bit of a look at kind of where the keepers do their prep work. So here you can see this is our enrichment shelf. So there's a whole lot going on in here, right? So again, we have a ton of different types of enrichment because we want to stimulate our animals in different ways. So here you can even see just some magazine pictures. And that might not look like much to you, but taping these up on the exhibit walls or in their indoor spaces is a great way for us to have something different in their space, have them look at something different. We have hoops that they can swim through. We have different types of balls and buoys and all sorts of fun things. This area is specifically for our seals, so all sorts of fun things for the seals to be able to interact with. And sometimes they're not always keen on everything. Our seals tend to be kind of scaredy cats, a little bit nervous of some things. But again, having something different in their space, switching it up is a great way to keep them very enriched, very excited. And here you can see there's a lot of information that happens in the behind the scenes space because we can't have one person work in this space all the time. Keepers need days off, right? So we have multiple people working in this space and they need to communicate with each other to make sure everyone knows what's going on and make sure the seals are getting all the care that they need. So you can just see here's where we have their weights. We have, again, water testing is really, really important. So we have, again, that very, very large filtration system, but we still need to check for things like pH or ammonia or nitrate, nitrite. So checking for all of those things. So our keepers do that daily and have the different equipment set up so that they can take samples from our various pools and make sure that everything is in the right guidelines to be nice and safe for our animals. And then you can also see this is our fridge where we thaw out the fish that you saw in that freezer. So it's kind of a thawing process where things, the fish slowly thaw out. And then in here, you can see bon appetit. That is the diet for Sparky, our seal. And so everything gets weighed out to ensure that we're keeping our seals nice and healthy. I'm sure they'd eat a lot more fish if we let them, but we gotta make sure they're staying nice and healthy. So we use this scale to weigh out our fish for their morning and afternoon diets to, again, ensure that they have the best quality and that they are staying nice and healthy. And now here we are in our behind the scenes space in seals. So this is a space where our seals would be able to access. So I might use the word access or shifting. So access just means they have the ability to go into this space. And shifting means we can move them from one space to another space. And here at the Henry Vilas Zoo, we really believe in giving our animals choices. That's something that's really important to us. So sometimes you might visit the zoo and you might not see that animal out on exhibit at that moment. And that's because we give them access to their behind the scenes space. So I know I love to have days where I'm just hanging out in my bedroom, I'm not hanging out around people, and I get to make that choice, right? And we want to be able to give that choice to our animals to take a break or be in a space where they might not see people. And that helps keep our animals really calm and comfortable. So choice is something that's really, really important to us. We often, unless we need to do for their health, we don't force our animals to do things. Instead, we give them that option. And one way that we can assist in giving them that choice and asking them for things is through positive reinforcement training, which we'll learn about in just a little bit with some of our keepers. So giving our animals choices and asking them to do things by rewarding them with treats is a great way for us to ensure that they are healthy and comfortable and nice and calm. And in here we have two smaller pools. Again, these are the pools that are salt water. So our seals always have access to that salt water pool. So here you can see one space. Here is the other. And those stairs are not for the seals, so those are for keepers. So when we drain this out, our keepers can go into that pool and access it, go in and out of it nice and easy to be able to clean it. And here you can see kind of some of that shifting stuff that I was talking about. Again, sometimes we're not sharing an animal, sharing a space with an animal. Our seals are an animal that we generally can share a space with. They're very safe to share a space with, but not all of our animals here in Arctic Passage are like that, like our polar bears or our grizzly bears. We would never share a space with. But even when an animal, doesn't want to share a space with us or might feel nervous around us, we don't want to get into their space and ask them to move. So instead we use these shifting doors. So you can see it's kind of on a pulley system here. So they'll be able to use those shifting knobs there. Goes up on that pulley system, and it opens or closes these doors right here. So the seal right now has access again to be inside or outside, but we can close it behind them if we need to, say, do some pool cleaning and ask them to be inside for a little bit. We would allow them to shift inside, and then we'd close that door behind them. And that's the same thing we do for our grizzly bears and our polar bears, is we ask them to shift inside or shift into a different space while we clean their other spaces. And we do that for our seals again. We can share a space with our seals, but we want to make sure that they're not getting in trouble or doing anything as we're cleaning, so we'll ask them to come inside. And we have two separate spaces in here if we ever needed to separate our seals and give them that option to be in different spaces. So we have a space for each seal, 2 indoor exhibits and an outdoor exhibit. All right, next we're gonna take a peek from the keeper side of things and view our pool from outside. So that's where we started our tour. That's where you usually would see the seals from. And here we are on the inside of our exhibit, and we have a lot of different spaces on our inside of our exhibit. So you can see this space right here, kind of the shallow spaces. That's nice and shallow for our seals because they're harbor seals, so they'd be hanging out in sometimes deep water and sometimes more shallow water. And then we have different islands so that they have access to those different spaces. And it also allows our keepers to go into more deeper parts of spaces where they can meet the seals in deeper parts of the pool, rather than just have them coming up on the shallow spaces. And you can see they're pretty excited right now because they know that it is about to be feeding time. So we're going to be doing some training. We have 3 of our amazing zookeepers here. And so each one of them is going to take a seal and train at the same time so that our seals each have someone to work with and are each getting food so they're not kind of competing with each other. And now I'm going to take it over to Keeper Kristen, who's going to kind of tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do.
Hello, am I close enough?
Yes.
Is everyone here all right? All right, perfect. I'm Kristen. I'm one of the bear and seal keepers here at the zoo. And today we're going to do a little bit of training with our 3 harbor seals. So we have 3 individuals that live here with us, 2 boys and a girl. I'm going to be working with Piper. He's our middle guy. He's almost 7 years old. Jenny is going to be working with Sammy. She's our youngest. She is almost 2 years old and moved here last summer from the Alaska Zoo. And then Dave is going to be working with Sparky. Sparky is our oldest. He'll be 23 years old next month. Sparky is middle-aged for harbor seal, so he's not a super young guy, but he's also not a super old guy. His grandma, Betty, lived here at the zoo with us until she was 50 years old, and she was the oldest harbor seal on record. Average life expectancy is like mid to late 40s. So we're hoping that Sparky has a really long life, just like his grandma did. And you might notice when Dave is training with Sparky that his target stick, which that's what this is, it's kind of like a rattle because Sparky has some cataracts. So we've made some adaptations to help him learn where we want him to go and do the training that we want him to do without having to necessarily see things. So we're going to do a lot of different behaviors with our seals. Most of what we train them to do is stuff that helps us help them take care of themselves. So things like coming up on shore where we are, that's what this target stick is super helpful for because we never go in the water with our seals. So we want them to come up to where we are when we ask them to. So asking them to target is super, super helpful. Opening their mouths on cue, letting us see their flippers, rolling over so we can see their belly, or doing a spin in the water so that if we were over by the window, we can see their belly really nice. And letting us touch their backs and also just holding still. So it's the same thing with this target stick, but they'll hold their nose right up against that target stick and hold still so we can get a really good look at their body. All of those things are things that help us if our vets needed to come over for any reason and look at anything. They're already super comfortable with these behaviors and ready to go. The boys are also both trained for voluntary injection. So they'll come up on deck, and if we ever needed to give them any vaccines or shots of any sort, they'd be able to get those voluntarily. Then we do some behaviors that are just for fun too. So we do have these purple donuts that they retrieve. So we can toss them in the water and ask the seal to go get it and bring it back to us. Piper, for one, loves going on the island. I don't know if you guys saw that when he did that when you guys first walked out. But he will probably go up on the island for us on cue. He also likes to talk. So I can show you guys what a vocalization of a harbor seal sounds like. A lot of people think it's like a sea lion that you would hear on the coast of California, but it's not really quite like that. So we'll do that one. Piper also really likes to slap the water, which is another way that harbor seals can communicate with each other. A lot of different techniques for talking to each other in the water. And they also kind of move around to different parts of the exhibit as we ask them. So all of our training that we do here at the zoo is through positive reinforcement, which means that they get a reward for doing what we ask them to do. And here in the harbor seal area, we use what we call clickers. So it just makes a noise like that so that our seals know that they've done what we've asked them to do and their fish is on the way. So you'll hear a lot of clicking happening while we're training, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm going to take Piper over to this shallow end over here. Sparky's going to hang out over here by the bridge with Dave, and Jenny's going to see where Sammy is most comfortable. She's never really seen this tripod setup, and she's definitely our shyest kid, so we're going to see what she's up for. We're hoping that she'll want to go over to the shallow area, but we'll kind of see what she says. The fun part about positive reinforcement training is the animals always have the choice on how they want to participate, so they get to make lots of decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Piper to go over there. Piper, can you listen?
All right, so you can see Kristen is using that targeting behavior. So she holds out that stick, and then when they touch their nose to that buoy, then they get that reward, that fish. And before she gives them that reward, she gives a click to say, yep, your food is coming, you did a good job. And target training is something we do with a lot of our animals here at the zoo because it's a really practical thing for us to train. So asking a giraffe to go into a different part of his exhibit, or even our red-footed tortoises in the aviary are all target trained. So that way we can move them to different spaces. And it does take quite a bit of time to be able to get them to build up these behaviors. Seals are incredibly smart. We say they're about like 10 times smarter than a dog. And so they really pick up on this training well. And this is, again, another form of enrichment. So it's something that's really making them use their incredibly smart brains to solve problems and to be able to work for their food, which is something that they would have to do in the wild. I'm sorry, my tripod is so scary to them. And again, you can see that bucket. That was one of the prepped diets that we saw in the kitchen. And see, she just asked him to hold. So sometimes we'll just say to have them touch their nose, but that hold helps them really stay still. And there was that talk behavior. You can hear. There's a clap right there. And the way they communicate is really kind of gargly. Again, it's not that seal noise or the sea lion noise that you might hear. Awesome. And again, we always give our animals choices. So again, if he chooses not to participate in training, nothing happens. If he chooses to participate in training, he gets a fish. So we get that positive reinforcement in. And there was that open behavior, and that allows our keepers to take a peek at their teeth, make sure everything's really healthy, and if we needed to ask them to for a veterinarian, again, it makes it way less stressful for our animals when they do have those routine vet checkups. Or if something were to be happening with them where we really want to take a look at those teeth or something in their mouth, they'd be super used to this. They'd do it every day, opening their mouth for their keeper, so it wouldn't be something that would be scary or something that would cause them stress, which is, again, something we really want to avoid, especially if an animal's not feeling well, is to avoid those high stress situations. And there was a little wave behavior. So because our seals are so smart, we ask them to do a lot of different things. For the most part, it's all very practical for us, really helping us see their whole bodies, helping our vets take really good care of them, but also some of it is just enrichment, trying something new, really working their brains to figure out new behaviors, and to do fun things like bring a little buoy back to the keeper.
One of the things I forgot about that Jenny was working on with Sammy, there's like a red star, so we're starting what we call station training. So we have a different colored shape for each seal, and we're starting to train them which color and shape is theirs. So they will go to that spot for us when we ask them to station. But we just started training that behavior about a week ago. So it's very, very beginning stages. Mostly right now we're just training them which shape is theirs to go to. Okay. I have about 2 pieces left.
And as much as we love our seals and love our animals here at the zoo, we do know that they aren't our pets. So we don't treat them as our pets. We don't give them snuggles as much as it'd be tempting to do sometimes. These are still wild animals, so we still need to treat them as such. And like Kristen said, the deeper pool areas, the seals know that that is a space that the keepers cannot go to. So they know that that is their choice to be in that space if they don't want to interact with the keeper. And they can swim away whenever they feel comfortable doing so. But then if they do come up, again, they get that positive reinforcement.
Do you guys have any questions at all about our seals or our training? Also, is this water too loud? Do we need to back away from this spot?
Can you guys hear okay?
Yeah, we can hear
up.
great. Yes.
Great.
There is a question about when is the best time to visit the zoo to happen to see these enrichment activities happening live.
When would be the best time to visit the zoo to see a seal training?
Oh, perfect. So right now we're not advertising seal training as like a set time for people to come because of our COVID things. We're trying to make sure that we don't have super big groups gathering together. But generally speaking, we feed them between 2 and 3 p.m. every single afternoon. So we're a little early right now. We gave them half their lunch. They're going to get the other half around 2:30. 2:30 tends to be our most regular time, but it's not totally set in stone right now. And hopefully as everything starts to open back up more and everyone gets more comfortable, we'll be able to start advertising. And then we usually have set days of the week that we have our feedings at like 2:15 or 2:30. And when we do get back to that point, it'll be advertised up at the front or at the gates whenever someone comes in. Hopefully soon. We'll get back to our keeper chat.
How did today's training go?
Today's training was great. They all seemed really excited to be training. They're all super motivated right now, which is fun to see them playing with their toys that we asked them to, and also really engaging with us. We can tell when they're a little bit less wanting to train because they're not really focusing on us and looking at what we're asking them to do. So everyone was super engaged today and really excited. That was a really nice little session.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
One more question, Courtney, here. How much do the animals in their different habitats, different animals, how much do they communicate with each other? Because working in Hotel Red, we would hear the birds some nights. So how much are they communicating with each other across habitats?
Ooh, how much do the animals communicate with each
That's a
other?
really good question that I don't really know for sure. I mean, some animals, like you can hear Buckwheat or Sandhill Crane calling right now. He's a louder individual where pretty much anyone across the zoo could hear him. Or when the lions roar, they can be heard across the zoo. But a polar bear may not necessarily know what a lion roaring is, other than just kind of hearing it. So I'm not sure between species how much they can actually understand one another. We do have, like, the harbor seals would be a prey animal for an animal like a polar bear, but they're so far apart that they can't really know, they don't really know that the other species is around. We have the grizzly bear exhibit between their exhibits, so they don't really know that the other one is there, to the best of my knowledge. No one ever seems to react to anything.
Do the seals communicate with each other?
The seals do definitely communicate with each other. So Piper is a very talkative guy. That's actually how we got his talk to be on cue, because he just talks all the time. And so one of our other trainers was able to do what we call capture that. So she would reinforce him every time he was gurgling. And eventually we were able to ask him to do it on cue. He talks a lot. Sparky doesn't gurgle quite as much. He's more of a flipper slapper. So whenever he wants to communicate with the other seals, there's a lot of slapping. And then they do a lot of, they kind of boop each other with their noses, and sometimes they will actually kind of breathe at each other's noses as well. So they have lots of different ways that they will kind of communicate with each other and what's going on. If they're agitated with one another, you might see someone kind of putting their flipper out and kind of clawing at them a little, but it's never anything that's really intense. It's just like, hey, you're in my space, please move away.
Any other questions?
No, but I knew I liked Piper because I like to talk all the time. But Rhonda sent a chat here that the gibbons call each other often throughout the day. They are so smart. They have a language for different things, such as keeper or vet. So how big is the language of like a seal? I remember once seeing on 60 Minutes, there's a few dogs that have, basically the vocabulary of a 3-year-old. How much language do they know?
I don't know for sure how much language they know. I do know that sometimes their gurgles sound quite different, so there must be some differences in the way that they're talking, but it's very subtle to the human ear that I know that they are hearing different things with each other, but it's very, very subtle for what I can hear. I think a lot of their communication comes from also some body language with each other, and then their flipper slapping. So they have a couple different ways of communicating, but I don't know, I couldn't put a number to it as to how many different ways they communicate.
Yeah, and that's a really unique question, and one of the really great ways that zoos can help scientists and help conservation, because we can't always answer those questions in a wild environment of what exactly this behavior is and take a really close look at what certain gargle sounds may sound like for an individual who's out in the ocean. But we would be able to do that here at a zoo. It's not something that we're currently researching or studying, but those kinds of questions are really one way that zoos can help the scientific community. So we participate in a couple of different conservation programs and a couple of different scientific programs to help us better understand these animals and better participate in their conservation. Zoos really serve a very unique purpose in that role. And another great way we help participate in conservation is through species survival plans, which is another unique part of being an AZA zoo. So a species survival plan, or an SSP, looks at all of the animals in captivity at AZA zoos and looks at their genetics and their genetic diversity. And as animals become more endangered, genetic diversity becomes incredibly important. So we do participate in a species survival plan for our harbor seals. Harbor seals are not an endangered animal, but we want to ensure that we have a very genetically diverse group of animals in zoos. But for our critically endangered animals, such as our Bornean orangutans, SSPs become incredibly important. So that's one way that zoos are participating in conservation on grounds, but we also get to participate in conservation off grounds as well, like through our partners with the Polar Bears International And I'm sure Rhonda could definitely talk your ear off about orangutan safe and how we help participate in conservation for orangutans, something we're very, very proud of. But again, yeah, just one of the ways that we really are a conservation organization, and that's kind of one of the ways that zoos have changed in the last couple of decades, is switching from just kind of being a fun entertainment place to really being a place for conservation and for people to learn about these animals and care about them so that they can take action in conservation as well. All right, are there any other questions about the seals or how we care for them?
No other questions right now, but if anyone does have any questions, please send them into the chat. We'll continue on.
Awesome. Well, since we have a little bit of time left, I'm actually going to take us over to take a peek at our grizzly bears, who were just hanging out in their exhibit. So let's see if we can get a good peek as I climb over some barriers. All right. So in here, we have our grizzly bears. This is one of our bear yards. And I can see one bear taking a nap in the sunshine over there, and it looks like we have, it's a little hard to see with the shadows. I believe this is Lexi, and it looks like Lexi has found some food that she likes to eat. So you can see Lexi, one of our grizzly bears, and then I believe that's Ash. She's hanging out right there. Oh, here she comes. Nice and close. So these two bears are sisters, and our grizzly bears actually have kind of a unique story. Typically, our animals at the zoo don't come from the wild because, again, as a conservation organization, it would not make much sense for us to be taking healthy animals out of a habitat that they are thriving in and putting them in a zoo. So instead, most of our animals come through those SSPs and from other zoos and aquariums. But these guys actually did come from the wild. So these guys came from Montana. And unfortunately for these grizzly bears, they learned that food comes from people and campsites. So that's not a great lesson for a little grizzly bear to learn. And grizzly bears are, for the most part, learned hunters. It's not necessarily an innate behavior where they'll just automatically start doing it right away. Instead, it is something that their mother teaches them how to do. So unfortunately for Ash and Lexi, their mother did not teach them how to be grizzly bears, and instead taught them that food comes from campsites and people. And so those bears were relocated a few times, but it wasn't looking like they would be able to survive in nature without the help of people. And that's not a very great thing for a grizzly bear to be around people. So what's a better place for a bear that loves to be around people than a zoo? So that's how we got our grizzly bears. And that's actually going to be the story for most grizzly bears that you see in any AZA zoo. That's one way that we can help these problem bears and help reduce the risk of them having to be euthanized because they are not in places where they should be, and that they can't really be rehabbed to be back in the wild. So that's, again, another way that we're helping animals and saving a kind of a space for them, so that way they can thrive here and teach people that story of how people interactions with animals can sometimes actually be negative, but we want to help ensure a positive and bright future for animals in the wild. And here we can see this exhibit from another space. So here, again, you can see our grizzly bear exhibit, and you can see there's a door right there. So again, that shifting is something that we might ask them to do when we give them access. So right now they can go behind the scenes if they choose to, but it looks like they're both having fun, eating some treats that Keeper Kristen probably gave to them just a little bit ago. And then right here, you can actually see, this is our training gate. So this is one that is viewable by the public. Right now, we're not doing public trainings again because of COVID. We want to make sure we're keeping everyone safe and distance. But if we needed to, and we have in the past opened up these doors, and this is a space where the keepers are able to interact with the bears. They don't go in with the bears like they do with the seals. Instead, there's a barrier to keep our keepers nice and safe. But that training gate is really helpful for us in being able to work with our animals, and the bears get trained just like the seals do every day. It's that form of enrichment. It's that way that we keep them really stimulated, and it helps us with those behaviors that help us best take care of them. So there, I believe you can see Barrett, our female polar bear, and it looks like Bo has decided to be behind the scenes, but I see lots of evidence of bears playing around in here, so he's probably just outside not that long ago. And you can see that enrichment again all over our zoo. So next time you come and visit the Henry Vilas Zoo, be sure to take a peek for different types of enrichment that you might see, because you'll find it, now that you know what it is all over our zoo. All right.
We may have lost Courtney, it looks like. There's a lot of cement in that area, so that would be my guess. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer some. I've been kind of peppering you with little factoids about AZA facilities, animals, and lots of fun. Oh, I think Courtney might be back. Courtney, are you back? Not quite yet. So if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Yeah, first question, Rhonda, we would love to hear about your research. I mean, you're a world-leading expert in your area of study. Please more about amazing things you're working on and how the Henry Valles is important to scientific research.
Yeah, so I have a passion for orangutans. I've been working with them for several years now, and we have put together something called Orangutan Safe, which means saving animals from extinction, and it's several AZA facilities working together and working with field researchers in Borneo and Sumatra, as well as orangutan rehabilitation centers to try and save orangutans. And our big ways that we're doing that are through habitat restoration. We have a project that the Kansas City Zoo spearheads, where they actually are working with palm oil plantations in Borneo and replanting the primary rainforest and creating little corridors and pathways so that the animals can go through there and still not be separated off between the palm oil plantations. So that's a really great way to ensure that our animals have space and kind of little bridges. Another really fun thing that we have been a part of, probably my favorite thing is we've actually been able to take orangutans that grew up in the rehab centers that were born in rehab and put them back out into the wild. That is to release a orangutan that was born in a center and now is living out in the primary rainforest and thriving is probably the coolest thing that we've done. So lots of really cool things. AZA zoos are all about conservation, and we're all about sharing that information with all of you, and love the fact that you guys are as excited about it as we are.
We got time for more questions here, a few more minutes. Send them in through the chat for either Courtney. By the way, Courtney, amazing job with the tour. As someone that has had to be, where's Waldo? Turning, your energy is infectious. So kudos to you. There were several compliments about great work there. One question I have before we get more questions is, how can we support the zoo? I know you guys are open now, but a little limited capacity. And then volunteering, I saw was an option, donating. How can we help support the great Henry Valles Zoo downtown?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Courtney. You guys are already amazing supporters. I say this, I'm from here. I grew up in McFarland. This is the most amazing community I've ever seen in terms of supporting their local zoo. So thank you already for what you do. But coming to visit us, learn about our animals, coming and just, hanging out with your family and friends is helping everyone. You get to have a good time, get to help the zoo out. Maybe you buy an ice cream cone, or maybe you decide that you're gonna read something off of a sign that tells you how to save energy, and it just ends up adding up. Those small things add up. And stay tuned, because we are gearing up for some really exciting new changes in the next few years in terms of what you saw with Arctic Passage. We're hoping to take across the zoo. So please, feel free to swing by often. We don't want to keep it the same for everybody. We're always changing it up.
Two questions, one for you, Rhonda, and one for Courtney. How important is it for you guys to be a free zoo? I know that's pretty unique, to be open and accessible to anyone in the community. For you, Rhonda, and then the question for Courtney, how can families get tours? I mean, what you did was amazing, to be able to tell that story more than I had ever known just walking around the zoo. So how important is it to be free? And then Courtney, how can we get tours of the zoo?
Yeah, so there are currently only 9 total AZA facilities, zoos, that are free, and some of them are really big ones that you know of, like St. Louis Zoo and National Zoo in Washington, D.C. So to be in the league where we're an amazing zoo that's able to do conservation, do a great guest experience, but anybody who can come through these gates is going to get to see a tiger, want to see a tiger, or see an orangutan, is a pretty amazing thing. I think that it is my favorite part of Henry Valles Zoo, is that anyone who wants to come through these gates and can find a way through these gates can have the same experience, and that feels really good. And I just really want to thank the community, because this wouldn't happen without this amazing community that we're in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I always tell people that we're open every single day and we're free. So if you haven't visited in a while, you have no excuses. Definitely come visit. And as far as being able to participate in awesome behind the scenes experiences like this, we just opened up our behind the scenes tours. So we offer 5 different tours looking at different facilities in different parts of the zoo and getting to do just kind of what you did, taking a peek and learning about what goes into caring for our animals at the zoo. You can find all the information about those on our website, henryvilaszoo.gov, under our education, under behind the scenes tours. We also have virtual tours too. So if you're in a space where you are not quite ready to come visit the zoo, we do also have tour options and animal connection options virtually. So again, you can find that on our website, henryvilaszoo.gov, under education.
Awesome. Well, from all of us at DMI to Courtney, amazing work on the tour. Rhonda, thank you so much for opening up your space and doing a great job, being great community leaders for this downtown space. I mean, when I tell other downtown leaders about the fact that we have this zoo downtown, they're all just jealous because it's such a great space for our entire community, right part of the city. So Courtney, thank you for all you do. Rhonda, thank you to all the team as well, all of the trainers and handlers that were there as well. Very thankful. Thank you to Tom for building an amazing facility with that many different of tanks and piping and salt and different, I don't know how you all figured it out. Certainly the tough job experts at JP Cullen. So Tom, thank you so much to JP Cullen. Thank you also to our friends at Thompson Investment Management and to Hush Blackwell. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Thank you, all the members that were joining us here today. Great, lots of events coming up through DMI. We've got many things on the calendar. We are going to be back live for the first time on June 10th for our new places from 4 to 6 o'clock at Bree Stevens Field. Come on, we're going to enjoy the field with our friends at Forward Madison and the Mallards. Join us on June 10th at 4 to 6 o'clock for a new live event. But again, Courtney, Rhonda, Tom, thank you all so much for your support today of DMI downtown. We are so thankful. We hope you guys all have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.